I'm not Stefan Glienke, but Stefan's on the line with me. What was your name one more time so I get it right?
Stefan Glienke.
Okay, Stefan Glienke. All right. So we decided to go ahead and do this session live, and we'll be taking your questions as well. So all sorts of great stuff here. So this skill sprint works with everything. The examples we're going to show you are going to be on Object Pascal, but it should also work with C++, and David's going to do some testing with that to make sure. It just leverages DUnit and DUnitX, which work with C++ as well as Delphi. Also, it works with Windows, OS X, Android, iOS, RAD Studio, and App Method. Now, it works with the tests running on Android and iOS devices. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that should work.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't tested that yet, but that's pretty cool that you can do that. So, we're talking about unit testing with TestInsight, and so what this does is it lets you take your. We'll show you an example of this, but you build your unit tests with DUnitX, DUnit, or DUnit2, or any unit testing framework. Like I said, all platforms. And it gives you a really fast way to integrate your tests into your IDE and be able to run them really great. It makes it a lot more productive, a lot more intuitive, I think, as far as being able to do unit testing. So with that, we're going to do our demonstration here. So first thing we're going to show is installing it. We're going to have the link so you can download this for XE8. It's actually, if you go to the blog notes here, you can find the link from there, or we'll give you the link on the resources page at the end, and just go through the installer. I got an error message when I downloaded it just because it's a unrecognized DXE, and that just happens with being new XEs, but it's fine. It asks for port ranges. I'll let you explain why this asks for port ranges, Stefan.
Yeah, the communication between the test project where the tests are in and the IDE is done via TCP/IP, and so there's actually a small REST server listening inside the IDE plugin, and this is the port range it will listen on. So in case you have multiple IDEs running, or you have already used some port for another software, it will choose the right port.
So since there's a range of 10 here, I could have 10 different IDEs running, and it would just, each one would pick a port and make it work then.
Yeah, I just choose a reasonable default value here.
Yeah. All right. Oops, I'm not going to actually run the install because I actually have Delphi running, but just so everybody gets the idea. So let's go ahead and jump over here to the IDE. And so I've put together a simple little example here. And so right here, this is our unit under test, and it has a simple add function here that adds two numbers, x and y, and naively assumes that the value is always 2. Now that's going to fail for most tests that we might do. So you'll see here in my tests that we actually got a lot of failures. So here's our unit tests. They're written in DUnitX. Like I said, this will work with any testing framework, but in this case we're using DUnitX. And you have a number of test cases being passed in here where it's passing. This test is called 1 and 1, and it's passing 1 and 1 and expecting 2. And so that's how this test case attribute works here in DUnitX. Is you give it a name and then the values you're passing in and what you expected. So do you want to explain what's going on here in TestInsight for everybody, Stefan?
I guess those that used DUnit in the past know the GUI runner of DUnit, and those that used DUnitX so far, they know there's only the console GUI, if you can call it GUI. We are using now an integrated UI for the result presentation of the test results. That means on the one hand I have everything in the IDE. I don't have to run some external program and then select the tests I want to run there and then click on the run button again and then see what tests I have and maybe remember the tests that I have and maybe remember the test that failed and then locate them back in my source. So in this case I can just click on one failed test and it will directly navigate to the failed test. So yeah, you are already in the unit, but you can see the cursor went down to line 40.
And double click on there, and it takes me right to my failed test.
Yeah. So also the other benefit is, well, you don't have to interrupt your work. You can code and then just hit, or you can actually compile the project and run it directly as you do with a normal project, or you can choose to click on the play button in the TestInsight window. It basically does the exact same thing. So in this case we have our 2 pass tests and 5 failed tests. There are 2 different ways to show them. The first one, which is what I personally prefer, is the tests are grouped by type, so you have all the failed tests first, and it automatically expands the failed tests, because that is usually what you care about if you're writing tests. You don't care if there are 500 and what successful tests. You only care if there's a failed test, and you can directly see them. Well, if you like the way they are grouped, as you know from DUnitX, you can select the group by fixture, and I think that will look familiar. So in this case we have one tMyTest object, test fixture, and then we have the test methods, and everything that worked in the first tab also works here. So you can click on the test. Not only in the failed test, you can also click on a successful test, and it will navigate there.
So navigate right there. And I neglected to show that there's a setup. You have to go right click on this and say TestInsight project, and specify that that test project is your TestInsight project.
Exactly. It does 2 things. First, the notices for the IDE plugin that this project in the project group is the test project. Currently there can be 1 project marked as the TestInsight project per project group. And the second thing it does, it just adds a compiler directive that says TestInsight.
Yeah, so I saw that.
It can be useful if you have like a unit that you include, and it says, okay, if I'm running on TestInsight, I'm using the TestInsight, and otherwise I'm choosing, like as you have here, the DUnit loggers for the XML output. Like if you have a test that also runs on a continuous integration server.
Yep. So all I had to do to create this test is I went File, New, Other, and then DUnitX project, and then right-clicked on it and specified Test Unit Project by clicking there, and then it's selected.
Yeah. I think Wins once integrated the TestInsight support into the DUnitX template that it creates.
Oh, okay. Now, so as you mentioned, is once I've got this created here, if I make a change to this, so let's go ahead and make a, come in here and I'll say, oh, well, clearly 2 is not always the right answer, so let's say we'll return the absolute value of x plus y. And so I can come down here and just hit run, and it'll run all my tests again. And we see that, well, let's go back to group by type, that's more useful to me. So we have 2 that failed. Adding -1 and -1 we expected to and got 2, and then my one that always fails. So we can go and look at my one that always fails, so it's selected there, and then here's the one that we don't see that the values are up here in the attributes. We don't, so up here we see the -1 and 1. It's expecting 2. And so now there's other ways besides hitting the run button that I can run a test, right?
That is actually from some other tool in another IDE where I got the idea from. So when I'm writing the test and I'm in the habit of saving often, I wanted to have the test run when I click the save button, and so you can say, okay, run the test when the project is saved, or actually if anything is saved.
Okay, so right now if anything's saved, it'll run. So I'm going to come back here and change this and say, well, what if I just say absolute x plus absolute y, and I'm going to hit save. And so I'm saving this file, which is not the test file, but any file gets saved, and we see it ran, and now I have 3 that are failing, or made things worse, not better. So now this one, we're adding -1 and 0 and 1, expected 0 but got 2, so that's clearly not an improvement on the way my ad works.
What I was going to say, you can see the last results in the status bar, and you can also see how long ago the tests were run. So it is useful sometimes if you are not sure, did they run or did they not run, because usually people say if you write unit test, like pure unit test as by the definition of the book, they should be as fast as possible, and often you don't even recognize they are running in the background.
So yeah, especially if you have it run on save, and they're just going to run, and you may not even know that they're going to be running all the time if you save early and save often. So the other way you can run a test is I can actually run an individual test. So if I right-click inside, or if I click, because I click in here and then I click the run test at position of cursor, this one here, it will run just that one test. And so we see that one succeeded and the rest were skipped. And I can run just in this one here, so I can click inside that one. If I hit Alt F9 on the keyboard, Alt F9, it runs just that one. Which one returns? Oops. You want to go ahead and explain the rest of these buttons across the top here?
Yeah, the next one to the save button is another trigger when the tests are run. So this is continuously running when idle. So you can set it in the settings. I think it's somewhere between 2 and 10 seconds. So if you type and then you're stopping typing and you're not doing anything for like 10 seconds, it automatically runs the tests, which can be quite nice. So if you don't save often, you can even have the test run all the time. But you have to be careful if you have compile errors in the project. It obviously can't run the project. It tries to compile them and then you get the compile error. Then there's the filter, which is just, okay, you can search through all your tons of failed tests for something, or your succeeded tests. Then the next one with the arrow. Usually, if that is not activated, the project is run, and at the end, all the results are sent back to the IDE, which is usually faster. If you, however, you can not only have unit tests with TestInsight, but also integration tests. And maybe you're connecting to a database and the tests run like minutes or even longer. You can have this one checked, and then it sends each test result immediately, and you can watch the progress as it goes, which is also quite useful. I think what it would be nice if can you put some sleep or something into the add method, and then we can see what it does.
So here is our test again, which we have the sleep in it, and I need to add sysutils up here. Now should work. So now if I turn on the show automatically, and I'll just hit run. So maybe I might not have been a long enough sleep. Let's try it longer here. A full second. And we'll run.
And now you can see the little spinner and the progress bar moving in the bottom.
And actually I realized that the assert is probably bailing on that early, so I'm going to sleep up on top. And now run it, we'll see. This will be even more obvious. So success 1, 2, 3, 1 failed, 3 failed. There we go. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do before. So that is this button here that lets you shows progress of tests. And so these next ones here allow you to filter the type of result you want to see. So for example, whether I want to see successes or not.
Yeah, that's just for, well, hiding all those test results that are not interesting to you. Obviously, you can't hide failures because they are important.
Yeah. That's true. I know a lot of people who have had projects they want to just hide the failures. So this will run selected tests. So I run this one. Then it just ran selected tests and skipped the rest, and I can hide skipped tests here. And then if I had tests that reported an error, I can hide those, but I don't have any to do that right now. So I think that's it. Let's see, this one, clear results, run all tests, run selected tests, so the tests you check, and this one runs the test that you have your cursor on in the IDE. So that's all there is to using TestInsight. So I'm going to go ahead and, anything else, Stefan, you want to cover, or have we gone through it all?
I think we covered it all.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and flip back to the slides. Give me just 1 second here. If you want a good explanation of why you should unit test, check out Unit Testing RAD in Action by Nick Hodges. If you want some more information on DUnitX, Robert Love has an excellent YouTube video you can check out there from a skill sprint. So nice, quick explanation of using DUnitX. Highly recommended. And also, if you want more information about why you should unit test, Nick Hodges has a book called Coding in Delphi that you should check out as well. If you follow this link, the short TestInsight link here, because it's linking straight to the exe, you'll get this error message from Bitly saying, whoa, hold on, this may be a problem. But if you go down to the bottom here, you can just continue at your own risk. And it's just saying that because it's going straight to an exe, they're afraid it might be malicious. So it should be fine. If you click here, it'll let you download it directly. Or if you go to the embt.co/sprint-test-insight, then it will work correctly and it links directly to the exe. So either way, you'll be fine. You'll be able to get to the TestInsight for XE8. So coming up next, we have taking beacons to the next level with Beacon Fence. So Beacon Fence is a new technology we just released. David and I will be presenting on that next Tuesday, the 11th. So definitely you want to come check this out. Tell your friends. It's going to be great. It's exciting stuff. Want to remind everybody about the special offers we have going on right now. So if you get RAD Studio XE8, Delphi XE8, or C++ Builder XE8, you get this bonus pack, which includes the VCL and FireMonkey premium styles, the new Object Pascal handbook by Marco Cantu, and the MITA Converter Basic. MITA Converter makes it easy for you to convert VCL applications to FireMonkey applications so that you can make a cross-platform application. Also, if you own XE3 or earlier, normally you would have to have a new purchase of XE8, so you would not get upgrade pricing. But if you purchase update subscription, which I recommend because then you get to take advantage of all the great updates and upgrades, then you get 45% off the regular price. So that's a great deal. So download the trial if you haven't downloaded already. Check out embarcadero.com/radoffer to learn more about these special offers.
Stefan, Alpha's asking, how can you make tests when the answers that can be tested against can't be made because they can only be known through computations?
I'm not sure if that is something that could be covered by unit testing or as the definition of unit testing, because usually in unit testing you define a defined behavior. I think these computations are also defined and there's some algorithm behind it, or you have some data, so you have a result that is defined and that does not change every time. So your task in a test, if you're testing something like this, would be to prepare the input data and then test if the computations are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I guess you could put sample data, whether it's in a database or just pretend a user input into a data file, and in your unit test, read that data file and do the computation, sort of simulating, maybe some user input or some other way the data is coming from a data stream, so that we do database testing. Sometimes we have what's called a golden master database that we would test against versus a live, changing all the time database, at least to test some of the code. But yeah, I mean, in unit testing, again, you are trying to test the logic against some known conditions, either the extremes of ranges or for that matter, random data, I guess.
I think such a test would more like be an integration test if you're strictly going by the definition, because a unit test is by definition something that is tested in isolation, so there's no database or network or anything else that goes to some external source involved in a unit test. But, well, you can use all the unit test frameworks also for integration tests and testing something about it against the database or some input file that you prepare, of course.
So I wanted to ask you a question about the building of TestInsight as an IDE plugin. Did you first build TestInsight as an external tool and then do the IDE integration of the logic, or did you all along the way plan that it would be an IDE integration?
Well, the idea for TestInsight was to make it integrated into the IDE, because I saw some other tools in other IDE environments, and I thought that this is something we are missing in Delphi. And even though we have a GUI test runner for DUnit, and at that time we just had the console for DUnitX, I felt that was a good opportunity to write a plugin that directly integrates into the IDE, and that, well, all the time if you run unit test, it's distracting to run the test and then click again on play, or maybe select the tests that you only want to run and then click play again or something, and then close the GUI test runner, then go back to your code and then fix the bug or continue writing unit tests, and it felt like a distraction. And so I wanted to have at least this integrated into the IDE, so you can focus on what you're doing. Yeah, well, that's it. It was an idea to make it an IDE plugin from the start. Yes.
Do you have advice if people are using the IDE and they're using TestInsight to run all their unit tests? Do you have advice on how they would then use a build system, maybe a continuous integration build test system? On the way?
Oh yeah, we are doing that at work, and well, actually, you're using a compiler directive in the DPR to have some kind of continuous integration unit testing, where it logs into these XML files that are read from Continua CI. And then if you are writing code or writing unit tests on the developer machine, you just open the test project, and then it uses TestInsight in the IDE.
TestInsight will work with DUnit and DUnitX, is that correct?
Yes, it does.
It works for...
In theory, it even works with any test framework that is not invented yet, because it's just saying, okay, there's a test that has a name, and this is the fail method, and it failed or it succeeded. So you can, even if someone wrote his own test framework, he can make the client unit for this test framework and use TestInsight with it.
Okay, and have you tested it with C++ Builder as well?
I didn't, but I think apart from the code navigation things, it should also work with, I think DUnitX runs on C++, so if you have C++ tests using DUnitX, it should work. Well, there's no integration for the client, so you have to write that, but the IDE plugin is there, so you can connect it.
So Cesar says that apparently his antivirus is complaining probably about the DUnitX download, probably just because it's an unknown exe. I've seen that a lot of times.
Yeah, I had that problem before. I think it's because I just uploaded the exe before the webinar, and I did not put in a certificate or signing. So I do that later, so it's not complaining.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's see. There's some other test questions here. Jeff has a question about showing how this works with the SAPI. As far as unit testing, I mean, as far as DUnitX would work with unit tests, within a SAPI, though, you wouldn't, like you talked about earlier, the difference between integration tests and unit tests. You'd probably be testing a unit that was used by the SAPI. So you wouldn't be testing the SAPI itself, but we're testing the code the SAPI uses. Does that sound accurate?
I think the test project would look like this. But I can think of writing any test that might not even be like unit test or integration test by their definition out of the book. But basically what TestInsight is just doing, it's presenting a collection of test results, and you can do anything with it. I think you can at the end, it's just it's a REST API. I need to put the API specs on the page, so you can even do some external stuff talking to the plugin.
And then Anthony's asking, and he says he saves more often than he compiles. He says, might there be a run tests upon compile hook at some point in TestInsight, or can we already use a post-build event and have the results magically appear in the TestInsight window?
The question would be, what are you compiling? If you compile your test project, you then want to also run it. So I would say not just compile it, but let it run. Otherwise, if you have another project and then along with it a TestInsight project, that could be another trigger for a future version, not just on saving or the continuous running the tests, but also if, after compile or something. Yes.
Question: can you save the output of the test window, or I guess I could just capture it with screen grab, right?
Right now, if you're interested in the thing you are most interested in would be some error message. So you can copy the error message with Control-C somewhere else if you really feel. Otherwise, if you're really interested in the test output, like in the NUnit format or something, you would use DUnitX with an additional logger, or I think they are called loggers. So you add the TestInsight logger and you add the output, the XML output logger. So you have both.
Let's see. Marcus is saying absolutely great. Thank you, Stefan. And Bruce says, what a great add-on. It can really smooth out the test-driven development workflow. Thanks for this. Kenneth says, they used to test menu states, visible, enabled, and so on. It works great.
Does TestInsight also work with DUnit? And the answer for that is yes. Does TestInsight work with C++ Builder X8? The IDE plugin works, and you can do unit testing, so yes. There was one here, Stefan, about when I use TestInsight, do other people on my team also have it installed if they continue to just run their unit tests as usual?
No. You have to make your project work with TestInsight and without, but that works just fine. We did that in our company before I convinced everyone to use TestInsight. Since it just uses the compiler switch, you can include either the if-defs right into the DPR, where it says, okay, if def TestInsight then uses the TestInsight unit, otherwise use the other units, or you make an extra unit just with the code.
All right, well, thank you, Stefan, for your time and for updating TestInsight for X8. I guess developing it in the first place. It's a great add-in, and a lot of people I know are big fans of it. I'm looking forward to using it now that it's available for X8 as well.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure.